Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of my Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War weapon speculation list. I'm Christopher, the video game historian, and if you missed part 1, I recommend clicking the link that's on screen now to go and watch it, as I take a look at 6 different firearms that could potentially be coming to Cold War this fall. Anyway, let's get started with part 2 and move on to light machine guns. So in terms of light machine guns, what could we potentially see in Cold War that wasn't already in the original Black Ops? Perhaps the PKM. While the RPK was in Black Ops 1, the PKM was not, and I would honestly argue that this is just as an iconic light machine gun of the Cold War as the RPK. It has not only seen various conflicts within the Cold War period itself, like the Vietnam War and Iran-Iraq War, along with the Soviet-Afghan War, but also countless other conflicts up into the modern day. The PKM was introduced in 1969 as a variant of the Soviet PK general purpose machine gun, designed to not only reduce the PK's weight and make operation easier, but to also replace the SGM and RP-46 machine guns already in service by the Soviets. The PKM would not only be used by the Soviets, but would also see service with various other Eastern Bloc and Middle Eastern nations throughout the 70s and 80s. The next light machine gun that we could potentially see is the CETME AMELI, a Spanish-designed machine gun designed in 1974 and used by both the Spanish and Mexico. While it looks very similar to the German MG42 and MG3, it differed in that this was a roller-delayed rifle firing from an open bolt and chambered in 5.56 NATO. Due to various similarities between the AMELI and other CETME rifles like the C and the L, parts could be interchanged. However, unlike either of those guns, the AMELI was fed from a 100 or 200 link M27 ammo belt. While it was really only noted for seeing service during the Mexican drug wars, it was nevertheless a product of the Cold War. Now let's talk about rifles. After World War II, rifles, both semi-auto and bolt action, continue to be utilized in many different roles for the military, especially for recon and snipers. One of the more iconic semi-auto rifles to be utilized by the Soviets was the SKS. The SKS was originally designed at the tail end of World War II in 1945, and despite it being the standard issue rifle for the Soviets for a very short amount of time, it still saw service in conflicts such as Korea, Vietnam, Rhodesia, and the Soviet-Afghan War, and can still be seen in conflicts up to this day. Like the AK-47, it was chambered in 7.62 by 39mm, but only held 10 rounds in its internal magazine, something that was rendered obsolete once the AK-47 was introduced. Nonetheless, the SKS was still a popular rifle throughout the Cold War period, and it would be a sacrilege to omit it from a Cold War themed video game. Now, as far as the bolt action rifle goes that we could potentially see is the British L42A1, a conversion rifle of the British SMLE or Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark I T rifles by the Royal Smart Arms Factory in the 1970s. These rifles were converted from being chambered in .303 British to the NATO standard 7.62 by 51mm cartridge. The L42A1 would be used by the British Army, Royal Marines, and the Royal Air Force Regiment until 1985, when they were replaced by the L96. Despite that though, this rifle was still used in various conflicts up and into the First Gulf War. Finally, let's wrap up this video with the assault rifle class and the 2 rifles I believe could show up in Cold War. First is the AR-10. The AR-10 is a battle rifle chambered in 7.62 by 51mm NATO, and just like the AR-15, was developed by AMELI in the 1950s. While it was never adopted by the US military, the AR-10 would see limited service with West Germany, Sudan, Portugal, and a few other European countries, and would even be used in the Angolan Independence War, Sudanese Civil War, and the Timor conflict. Still, while it was never used by the US and has seen limited conflict, it has still become an iconic rifle of the 1950s and 60s and are still popular to this day among shooters, that it deserves a spot in Cold War. And finally, the very last rifle I have on the list is the CETME Model C, Model L, or the H&K G3 battle rifles. These rifles are roller delayed blowbacks chambered in 7.62 by 51 NATO, except for the Model L, which was a 5.56 by 45mm assault rifle. The original CETME Model A, B, and C rifles were first manufactured in Spain in the 1950s, while the downsized Model L came about in the 1980s. The CETME was the standard issue rifle of the Spanish military until 1999, when they were finally replaced by the H&K G36. Meanwhile, the H&K G3 would be developed in collaboration with CETME for use for the German military, and had a very similar, almost identical design. The G3 would prove to be a very successful rifle that it would go on to serve as a basis for future weapons such as the PSG-1 and MSG-90, as well as the HK-11 and 21 light machine guns. Since the rifle's introduction in 1959, the G3 would see service in countless conflicts such as the Indo-Pakistan Wars, Rhodesian Bush War, the Football War, Iran-Iraq War, and many others, and has been used by over 50 countries around the world, either for the military or their police forces. I personally own a G3 semi-auto clone, and it is a blast to shoot, and would love to see it appear in this year's Call of Duty, as it certainly is an iconic rifle of the Cold War. Anyway, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed this, because it was a lot to research nearly 5 decades of weapon development and firearms used or manufactured during the Cold War period, and then narrowing that list down to 12. If you did enjoy it, please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know in the comments below what firearms you're looking forward to using or hoping to see in Call of Duty Cold War this fall. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter under @RealHistoryOf, and I'll see you all in the next video.
We're in control! We're losing ground, step it up!